Thank you, everyone.
Two agendas.
Welcome to NHS Direct's board meeting of the 23rd of July. We've just had our AGM, which is our excuse for starting slightly late. I hope we haven't kept anyone waiting. We have a relatively slimline board meeting today, partly because we've had the AGM and partly, probably more importantly, because we're going to be going into an extended private board and strategy session afterwards. So you'll find that this board is relatively minimalist and covers all of the required formal elements and not much else. We have apologies for absence still from Louisa Dillner and Sue Hunt, our non-executives. And haven't had any declarations of interest. Assume there aren't going to be any. Looking around, no, that's fine. Gone. Minutes of the 25th of June meeting, which was a month ago. Are there any matters of accuracy? No.
One typo. Oh, a typo.
Okay. Pete found a typo. Where is that?
10.1, third bullet point, third line. Say with, not which.
Yes. Okay, got that. Thank you.
That helps.
Sarah, did you have a point?
Just at section 8, the corporate risk register should be the board assurance framework. It's just been duplicated twice accidentally.
Okay, fine. Thank you. We can sort that out. I'll do that under actions. So are there any questions before we go to formal matters arising? I have a couple, neither of which were, I think, actions on our part, so they don't pop up in the action log. They are 6.11 and 6.12, the Luton trial and the Sheffield report. The questions are dates. Anybody? Do we know when we're likely to have any publicly available results of the trial of putting the 0845 volume 211? And do we know when the Sheffield valuation is going to be?
Two separate but related things. So Tricia, I think you're best placed to answer the first of those on the trial.
The trial, the data and first draft of the report has been discussed. There isn't a final date of its publication though yet.
Okay, but the trial has been completed.
Trial is complete.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
the data is in. The report is in first draft form, but no dates for publication.
And who's writing the report?
Kirk, our analyst, took a draft report to the meeting which was held last week this is a proposal for a first draft. The rest of the members of that team were contributing to that report, but no date, as I've said, for the final version.
So can we come back to that? And I'll ask the same question next month.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sheffield report.
Sheffield report. So, Ruth, you went to the 111 programme board on my behalf as I was bidding, I think. Oh no, I was graduating. Yes, thank you. Sorry.
On behalf of his daughter.
Yeah, my daughter's graduation.
So the Department of Health 111 programme board received the final version of the Sheffield evaluation report for sign-off, but there is at the moment no detail on when the report will be published.
No detail. Okay,
No
so
date.
if it's not out by next board meeting, I'll ask the same question.
Was it signed off by the 111 programme board?
The programme board was not officially asked to sign it off. No, the programme board had received a draft version of the report, which I think was discussed by the programme board, and that's the meeting, Nick, that you were at. I think a number of changes had been suggested to the Sheffield University evaluation team, and a final draft had been, or a final version of the report had been produced. But there was no further detail on how it would be published or when it would be published.
Okay, Shane. Thank you very much. Shall we then move on to the action log, which I'd like to kick off in penitential mode by saying I don't think I got round to circulating the notes from the Health and Social Care, from the Information Strategy meeting. I will do that, particularly if someone reminds me.
Yes.
They are available, I will send them round. I think, Peter, you asked for them, but I will send them round. Nick,
Okay.
other items on the action log?
Okay, so Roger, I think you're going to give a quick verbal update on our future work.
So we're going to bring a full report to the September board meeting on the entire Our Future workforce and its implementation.
So that's the meeting on the 20... Keisha will remind me. 23rd of September, because we had 2 scheduled board meetings in September.
Once it's been through the Executive Management Board and the National Joint Partnership Board. So in the meantime, I'm just going to give you a verbal update today. So as you will recall, we had a 112-day consultation in the second half of last year, which led to the board making a decision at its November meeting to go ahead with the implementation phase of the Our Future Workforce programme. And the first schedules resulting from the implementation were worked from Monday the 26th of March. However, the board will also recall that at about the time of the implementation, there was a challenge from the Royal College of Nursing, which could have led to a judicial review on the failure of our public duty under the 2010 Equality Act to consider those members of the affected workforce with protected characteristics under the Act, specifically in relation to the way we were applying our flexible working policy. So you'll recall that the board discussed at some length at its April 2012 meeting, the RCN challenge, and the discussion led to a decision to review all requests for flexible working. So we very recently completed the review, and that will all be included in the September report. But as an informal update for the board today, I can report that we've reviewed 223 flexible working requests, 116 for care-related requests and 107 for disability-related requests. And following detailed advice from our occupational health service partners, we'll be acceding to a number of requests which will have some effect on our ability to schedule to the maximum effect, but we estimate the final number will be less than 50 and they will be almost entirely related to disability. In terms of roster efficiency, later in the meeting we will be discussing the board scorecard, but the board will note in table B14 that there has been a very significant improvement since March in roster efficiency, and in B15 a significant improvement in schedule adherence, which are 2 key indicators of effective scheduling, which are now for the first time since the implementation approaching the industry average. As I said, we will submit a final implementation report at the September meeting, but I would like at this stage to acknowledge that the implementation of the programme has been a very painful process for many dedicated colleagues who work at the front line of NHS Direct services, as it removed individualised rosters for many who have been able to maintain a balance between their work for NHS Direct and other commitments, either related to their own health or caring for others for many years. Nevertheless, we are certain that the exercise has been necessary in order to gain the efficiency to give ourselves a chance of becoming a provider of 111 services.
Chip in at the end.
Please do, yeah.
Just to clarify that as we reach the conclusion of the flexible working request process, in line with the board's agreement, I will take an executive decision to implement and get on with those flexible working requests rather than wait for further board discussion at the end of September. So what you'll have reported back to you at the end of September is the results, and I will be anxious to get on with giving everybody the conclusion of those request applications just as soon as we can.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right, Nick, because we don't want to delay it unnecessarily for individuals, and I can't see that the board would without anything.
No, I agree.
Can I just like to add something? Thank you, Roger. I think it's not just about 111 that was driving the roster thing. I mean, I think we will we will have seen in our performance pack that we have non-trivial performance challenges on our core service, and that in order to deliver that, we needed to make a change.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. Are there any questions to Roger on that, or on anything else on the action log?
Well,
do you want to?
Yeah,
Sorry, Peter first.
I was just going to say, I think, although I do accept, because I have seen similar reviews that had to be taken because of changes to the system, but it is being done, from what you've just said, in a very professional and objective way. And I think that's the important part of any of this sort of review, that is the situation, and that you're bringing back those messages to this board. So that to me is very important.
Well, thank you for that contribution, Peter, because I personally haven't had your experience. So it's really helpful that you bring the experience that you've had in other sectors to the table, and you can reassure us that the quality and the professionalism of the process that we've seen measures well to what's done elsewhere.
And people like the OTs that are doing this work, I mean, are really some, I don't know these people individually, but I know the profession, and certainly in other places where I'm working and dealing with OTs, they do a very thorough and professional job, and I think they're the right sort of individuals who can help you make these very tough decisions.
Okay, so can I just pick up the penultimate action, just to say that I took the decision to not re-present this particular metric to the board, as Keith was away last week, and I wanted to make doubly sure that both Trevor and Keith were in agreement with the re-presentation of the forward capacity fulfilment point. And Keith, can I just ask you so you're making reported as making a brave statement in terms of we'll have enough nurses by August.
Yeah, well, I'll give some further clarity to that. So for a short period through July and August, we will have the number of nurses that are required against the budget plan and the capacity plan. However, AHT is currently higher due to the volume of new staff that we've brought in over the last 3 or 4 months. So the reality will be slightly lower, but attrition has remained stable.
So just for those of us, so what you're saying is new people have slightly longer course.
That's right.
So,
it takes them typically 2 to 3 months to get to the performance levels, but it's impossible to model that because everybody's different.
Okay.
So you're qualifying this rather bold,
yes,
brave statement by saying it's not quite as...
That's right. We are also still affected, so again the capacity plan is built on all things being equal. We are still affected by quite a large number of staff not working the full rota pattern due to the ongoing ISPs, which Roger's discussed earlier, and as they become more settled, we'll be able to plan more accurately.
ISP being
the individualised shift patterns.
Fine, thank you. Yeah.
We do typically have lower volumes through the summer, so that's helped us for July and August. This summer may be different, however, with the Olympics, but we have staffed to the level that our commissioners have signed off and bought, and volumes and staff requirements begin to rise again in September or October, and we're currently recruiting through our partners to close that gap and for the winter period.
Okay, thank you. I think that helps qualify where we are. Good. Excellent.
Okay, and I think the last action is closed, so unless there's anything you wanted to say about that, no. Then we're done.
Okay. Chief Executive's report then.
Yep. So just very quickly, litigation authority level 1 assessment. The board is just formally reporting that. I think we've reported it verbally, but it's extremely gratifying to have that news. I think you saw earlier on examples of the Values Awards and Long Service Awards ceremonies and processes, which we will be repeating this year, and thank you to those on the board who are volunteering to participate on the 5th, 6th or 7th of September. And procurement update, the as I said earlier, we're actually the second most popular choice of one provider, but still have simply 4.5% of England's population in procurements that have been publicly announced. So I think that's all that I have to say. Happy to pick up any questions.
Are there any questions for Nick that aren't going to form part of our private stroke strategy? Again, no. All right.
Lots of questions there.
Thank you very much, Nick. Let's move on to the performance report. Trevor, would you like to give your usual succinct introduction, and we'll take performance and then we'll take money.
Overall performance relatively unchanged. Our access into the service is relatively good. Unfortunately, our clinical assessment rates are not as good as we would wish, and we recognise the important need to improve them. Challenge remains around our nurse staffing numbers and having the right numbers on at the right times in order to deal with those assessments appropriately. So that impact upon not only the assessment rates but also in terms of the volumes of calls that we can safely deal with as a service. That said, our patient satisfaction remains good at 92% and complaints are just 0.32 per 10,000 calls.
Okay. Does anybody have questions on the detail behind the performance? Thank you, Chairman. Yes, of course.
Just on the back page, that's all right, 11 or 11. Other than the third of line 3 and 3B, which is perfect, the rest of it is very patchy. It looks patchy when you just look at it as a pattern. That's all. Because last time when you did this, I thought it looked less patchy. And
yeah, so
I mean,
observation.
It just seems to be off and on, off and on.
Yes. As I reported to last month's board, we had some significant issues with our in-source partner, who now provide just on 50% of our health advisor resource. Those issues have continued into June. We have issued formal performance notices to that organisation. We have held performance meetings and put remedial notices and actions in place. They have committed to being back to performance levels by the end of August, but the failings that they suffered were much deeper than were initially reported to us.
I had a meeting in your absence with the American-based Chief Operating Officer for KGB, who are the parent company, and they are, curiously, an American company called KGB. I didn't raise the irony of that. Sorry, that's completely
thrown you now.
but they reassured me of their corporate commitment to getting the performance back, and I was reassured.
Could I check whether we are incurring financial penalties with the Commissioner as a consequence of their performance, and whether those penalties are passed on?
So we have incurred some increased financial penalties with our performance. We don't formally within the contract have the ability to pass those through to our provider. 2 points. Within the formal performance meeting that we had, I tabled with them that we were looking for a contract change where we would have a more clear and transparent pass-through of our financial penalties to them where they fail to perform, because we have a very clear correlation of where they fail to perform and when we fail to hit our answer in 60, and there's a knock-on effect where we fail to answer in 60 to all the other clinical KPIs. So we've tabled that. I've had a response to that last week whilst I was away, and I will update when I've had a chance to read that. We have also indicated to them that we would be looking for an informal gesture for the June period, and I'm waiting to receive their proposals on that.
A polite gesture.
Okay, well, so you'll let us know how you get on with that. Okay, I've got a question on the calls not requiring onward referral. So that's dropped slightly. I was interested in why. My recollection, so we've got last year's figures, and my recollection year on year is that our completed within NHS Direct figures tend to go up in the summer, which I seem to recall is a lot to do with hay fever and eye problems, and that we get a peak of calls in the summer that relate to allergy type things that we tend to be able to support people to look after themselves at home. Do we know what's happening now? I mean, that may not be right. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. Do we know why we've slipped below?
Anecdotally, the evidence is suggesting that we've not had those allergy. It's because of the bad weather.
Yeah,
we've had more people with coughs,
Pneumonia.
colds. Absolutely, chest infections is a key one, and abdominal pain, diarrhea, and vomiting are the other algorithms.
So it's been more of a winter pattern, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah.
Steve.
I've just got a question on B7 and B8, which is abandonment rates, and I'm sort of just. And I might have asked this before, someone might have told me, but if I had, then that brain cell was decided to leave me. But why is the abandonment rate so much lower on 111 than 0845?
It's to do with the prioritisation and the routing. There are more staff ring-fenced into 111 to protect the service levels on the pilots and where we're currently bidding.
So if that's the case, then shouldn't that be a mitigation towards penalties for the 045?
The separate commissions.
So we've made that trade-off, and we have to take the hit
okay.
with our other commissioners.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I guess the follow-up question would be, do we want to revisit that prioritisation? And I'm not looking for an answer now. I think
It's an absolutely valid question.
It wouldn't
Which
be
we
right
discussed
to answer it now. So are you going to discuss it?
Yeah, we discuss it as an exec group on an almost weekly basis
Okay,
at the minute.
Good. Glad to hear that, and you'll report back if and when we decide to make a change. Steve.
Just one, actually, for once, a positive comment about sickness, which is, I think, given all the changes, the fact that it's remained stable for a few months is in itself probably an accomplishment.
Tim.
Sorry,
just to pick up on the just follow through on the sickness. Are we showing the Olympics in the call centres?
Are we showing them on tape?
I think we have. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Where we have the facilities.
Where we have the
to do so.
facilities.
Good. Okay. Any idea whether that covers, half our staff or a quarter? Or
It covers the majority. Some of the smaller call centres where we have joint occupancy, then we're not showing them. But certainly our major centres, the sporting events are on display, and obviously we're muted with the ticky-tapey CFAX words to go with it.
Excellent. I hope people enjoy them.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on operational performance before we go on to finance? No? Okay, Trevor, back to you.
We've ended the first quarter ahead of our financial plan for the year to date with a surplus of £500,000. We continue to closely manage our finances and monitor them through our monthly executive review meetings and our management board. We've agreed to lock in the underspends that relate to quarter one to provide for further contingency and resourcing of our strategic change programme throughout the remainder of the year. So a good set of results so far.
Thank you, indeed. Very good set of results so far. Any questions on that?
Very good.
Okay. Thank you. Let's carry on to the board assurance framework. Sarah, would you like to introduce that?
Thank you, Joanne. Apologies, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so you might struggle to hear me more than usual. The board assurance framework has been reviewed and updated, and we currently have 5 red principal objectives on that framework, and this is due to our key risks, recruitment of nurse advisors and health advisor performance. And I'm happy to take any further questions.
Questions? No? Okay, thank you. We're then on the corporate risk register.
Yes. And similarly, the public section of the corporate risk register is currently showing 6 entries, and again, the 2 red risks in the existing service delivery area are around health advisor performance and recruitment of nurse advisors.
What we've just been discussing.
So that's, it's reassuring in a way. It shows that what the framework does in the risk register is it really picks up the things that are important.
Yes.
So that's good. It's good that it exists, but it's good that our corporate mechanisms pick those up well. Thank you. Any questions on that? No. We're making hugely fast progress here. We're then, I believe, on to audit committee minutes. 11th of June, we've reported on the content. Twice.
Twice. One of the special.
Okay.
The other. Anyway. Right.
So I'm assuming there aren't going to be any particularly researching questions on the audit committee minutes. I mean, when I looked at them again, what they reminded me of is what a demanding agenda you have to cover. So that was the message that I took away.
That particular meeting was enormous, wasn't it?
Yes, it's all about pace.
It's all about what, sorry?
Pace.
Pace. It's about pace.
The chair of the audit committee.
I will listen and learn.
Keeps us at pace.
We've had a clinical governance committee meeting. Sue's not here. I'm assuming she's asked somebody to report back in her absence. Thank you, Trevor.
It's a fairly low-key meeting. Tricia and Nick were unavoidably detained with one of our significant commissioners around 111. Only three things I'll mention. We had a meningitis-like symptoms audit some time ago.
Yeah.
We reviewed the action plan, and everything that should have been done in the action plan has been, which is good news. We considered the 6-monthly review of serious incidents, and that will be coming to the next board meeting. And likewise, we reviewed the dental service quality review, and that is coming to the September board meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Nothing else.
That sounds good. Okay. I think we're more or less at the end of our public board meeting. So it only remains for me to ask if there's any other business. No. The next meeting of this board will be on the 24th of September here at Leman Street. So I'm going to resolve that we move into private session, and in order to deal with the technical issues, I think we're going to start at 10 past. So we're going to have another 5-minute break because you've earned that.